If that's fine with everybody, I see everybody who's likely to be here is here. Welcome, thank you. In part, we're having a meeting tonight because we haven't had a meeting since early April. It just seemed like a good idea.
Do
Otherwise,
we have to vote for a new chair?
if you,
Don't we have to re-elect you?
I was wondering about that today.
Yeah.
When in fact do the
Let's re-elect him.
Let's re-elect Fred. He's doing
No,
a
you
great
don't have
job.
to do it. There's been no
there's a wonderful vice chair sitting in on the meeting as well.
Yeah,
Well-
thank you. I'll pass this time. I'm not quite there yet.
We love her too, but
You gotta
Fred, we
do 2
want
years,
you.
Fred.
Yeah.
Are we having?
I vote-
Is that what
I
we're doing?
vote
just a
not
point of
me.
order here. I don't
Oh,
remember
for God's sake.
seeing it on the agenda.
Are you in a pond?
That's right. It's not on the agenda. We'll have it at our next meeting. How about that?
All right.
Because we do have to have a meeting in June. So a little bit of housekeeping really quick. We
It's
have,
usually the first meeting after town meeting that we have the reorganization, so we could technically
Oh,
go
all
for a
right.
while.
we can wait till October.
Right.
That's
Thank
part
you.
of tonight's business.
Okay.
We
Hey,
have-
it's 7:03,
yeah, well, the meeting has been called to order.
so let's get going.
I'm trying. But, you know, I have to get down off the figurative shoulders of. There you go.
You have shoulders.
Okay, I've kind of lost. I have
There's the agenda. All I see is the agenda.
Yes. Did
I
you
just
get
put it
that?
up. Yep, I just put it up so you guys know what I'm talking about.
Okay.
My internet connection is real glitchy, so
Can we
just
go
let
back
me
to
know.
another view?
Can I ask a quick question? Do we know, do we have the official date, October for town meeting?
I've been told it's October 5th. I don't know how official that is.
October 5th.
Okay, thank you.
So before we get to actual business, I just want to mention that in terms of housekeeping, we don't have transfers to vote on tonight, but we will at the next meeting in June because we have to vote on transfers before July, or July 15th. So they will be published, available, and we'll address them. I'm guessing our next meeting will be June 24th, which is the last Wednesday in June, unless people have a huge issue with that. I'd put it on the calendar now, and that should be plenty of time for whatever town business to get done that needs to get done prior to July 15th. And the minutes, we have several meetings worth of minutes that are still being worked on and will be available for the next meeting. As you know, there have been some, well, Rebecca did a head bump with her dog back when it was in February, and that had consequences. And then there have been some other issues, and no big deal. We'll get to all the meeting minutes. So that's that, okay? And of course, everything's being recorded, so nothing is getting lost. Everything's available on the town website. So in terms of tonight's agenda, it is as loose as it can be in terms of what we need to do. I wanted to make sure everybody was up to date on, for example, the timing of certain things and what the status is, as best as I've been able to figure. And if anybody has more updated information, for example, I haven't had a chance to look at last night's select board meeting, so I don't know if anything new was introduced. We were having a water emergency yesterday, but I mentioned July 15th. By then, we have to have voted on the transfers, so we'll do that in June. The warrant, as I understand it, may not be closed until August. Originally, it was supposed to be, well, by now, it was supposed to be this week. Then it was going to be June, but now my understanding is that it may not be finalized until August, as late as August, which is not to say it will be August. It could be before that. And the town meeting is at least tentatively scheduled for October 5th. All of that presupposes that they figure out a way to have it, right? If we have another surge in the fall, all of this can just go, you know, for all the same reasons that it's that way now. But those are the timeline highlights that I'm aware of. Anybody have any questions or thoughts or concerns or issues around those?
Can you just sort of explain the status that our local government is operating in right, I guess, starting, right from June 1st, I guess, to October, or whatever the dates are here?
It's a great question, and I wish I had a definitive answer, but as of last night, there are 2 finalists for the new TA position. As you probably know, Dan was committed prior to the pandemic to leaving in June. He has agreed, as I understand it, to be as involved as he needs to be during the transition period. They have not decided on which of the 2 finalists to go with. I got a very brief thumbnail today. There's more detail in the Board of Selectmen's meeting last night. But as I understand it, one is a woman from Maryland who is the TA in what sounds like a much smaller town. She had a budget of $3 and some million, and that is a fraction of what Wellfleet's budget is. So I'm assuming that then means smaller town. And the other candidate is a guy who I believe was TA in a smallish off Cape, Massachusetts town, but either lives in or has a residence on Cape Cod. And so it's down to those 2. I assume the final decision will be within weeks, and we will be at the point of having a new TA. Also, this is the one I'm not 100% sure of. My understanding is that the election of the new Board of Selectmen, select person, and a couple of discretionary articles was supposed to be voted on in mid-June. Does anybody know, is that happening, or is that got pushed off? Is anybody aware? I'll try to find out and I'll send you an email. Originally, it was going to be that we were going to have the new Board of Selectmen, but that is that people would have to go to the polls one way or the other by mid-June. I don't think that's still happening or not. I wish I did. And part of the reason I don't is because, frankly, I talked to Janet Reinhardt today, I talked to Dan Hort today, I've talked to a few other people, and there isn't one coherent message that I've heard yet on the absolute dates of everything and the schedule for things. It's an awful lot of, we're working on it, it's a fungible thing, and wait and see. You know, things have been, over the last month, things have been continually getting pushed back. You know, and reality bites right now with this deal, you know. So I know a lot of people are waiting on, well, a lot of Wellfleet is waiting on the governor's next pronouncement about what can open in June, restaurants and so on, and, you know, under what circumstances they can open and how open they can be, which will have a direct impact on the life of the town this summer and revenues and yada, yada, yada. So, and that includes short-term rentals and longer-term rentals, and whether you can rent and you can't rent, and, you know, all that. So it's dominoes, really, as far as I can see, in that one decision then has consequences to a whole set of other decisions. But the one that, you know, the movie Marathon Man, where
Dustin Hoffman gets tortured by a dentist. Yes.
yes, and what does the dentist say to him while he's torturing him?
He says, "What is it true? Is it true? What is he?" It's
Is
Laurence Olivier.
Is it safe?
Is it safe? That's right.
That is
Good
the
one.
that's the one predicate for all of this other crap.
That's right. Is it safe?
Nobody knows. So there you go, right? That's where we're at. We are being tortured by Lawrence.
That's the grossest thing that's happened on Zoom so
No,
far.
okay. And nobody knows that it's safe. These are going to be good minutes, hopefully. So
Are you going to play a song?
I wasn't planning on it. I played it.
No, really? Your piano is like right next to you?
Yeah, but it's an electric piano. It's not on right now.
Oh, all right.
I do
Should
have.
we get back to town affairs?
Oh, no.
Yes.
When was Dan gave his notice? What did he give us his last days
June
working for the
30th.
town?
I
Does
don't.
Last day
know?
of June.
It was
Last day of June?
It was the last day of
Okay.
June, but he's extended it to July 31st.
Oh,
Oh, good.
So he's
Nice.
rescinded the last day of June, and now his last day is
July
July.
31st.
July 31st. Okay.
Mhm. I think that point they'll still have hired the new TA, and I think he's just going to kind of break him into her into the position, is from what I
Okay.
understand.
And
Why
what-
don't they just
what
have
are-
the town, why don't they just have the assistant town administrator do the interim stuff? Get him out of the picture altogether.
He's still new, so I don't know that, I don't know the answer to that question.
Okay, so what kind of plans do the Board of Selectmen have during, it sounds to me like they have nothing going in terms of how to deal with this crisis we have in terms of revenue shortage. What, are they gonna come up? I mean, they're not doing anything, right? I mean, there's no plan for how to address these.
You know, I wouldn't,
I think they have some plans. I talked to Mike DeVasto today, and they're talking about stuff.
Like what kind of stuff?
I won't want to, because it's not for me to say, but it sounds like they have some ideas for restaurant revenue, and I don't know. But it's not like it sounds like they're thinking about it and getting started on it.
So I have, and I did watch part of the selectmen's meeting last night. Good luck with that, Fred. There needs to be, and I was thinking about this, the direction and, the adults in the room and the things that we should be concerned. And I'm extremely concerned. The budget that we've proposed, that we've been working on all year, has to be totally reworked, because there's going to need to be some serious budget cuts, because the revenue that as everybody has anticipated from all the way down from the pot shops, I mean, we're not even going to be looking at our normal revenues. We were counting last year, we were counting the beans for the short-term rentals. That's not going to be there this year. The pot shops, we're not going to have that this year. The meals tax is going to be significantly decreased to the town. The rental taxes
Beach
are gonna be-
revenue also.
the revenue stream is going to be so significally changed that I don't even feel comfortable with the budget that we have, because we don't know how we're going to fund it. And that's a tremendous concern. And I know we're an advisory board, but I don't hear a lot of other people thinking about how that has to be reworked. And my concern is with the transition of Dan leaving and having, excuse me, having somebody new coming on board, that, we're pushing back things, and we're going to get stuck, and somebody's going to have to make some hard choices and some hard decisions.
Yeah, we really need to see revised budgets, because, whatever we've looked at for the past, couple of months, that doesn't have the revenue behind it to make it realistic. And so at least at a worst case, the town guys have got to be planning right now for worst case scenario.
so two things. Thank you, the last three of you, for the segue, because that's what I was hoping we would talk about with the rest of this meeting. And it's an open-ended thing. If we talk for 5 minutes, fine. If we talk for an hour, fine. Right now, we are, by state mandate, we are supposed to be spending money based on the FY 2020 budget. That is 1/12 expenditures every month based on last year's budget. So the upcoming budget, the one that we spent, a few months vetting back in December, January, whatever, I think we all kind of agree is fungible at this point. It should be reworked. Maybe it is being reworked, or they're starting to think about reworking it, but it has not been reworked at this point. In addition to that, there are open questions about, will the state truly pony up its share of the dredging costs? Because the state is beleaguered as well. They've spent a lot of money on COVID stuff they weren't planning on. So can we count on that $7.5 million? The water system upgrade that was predicated on running to the new, providing a better source of water to the affordable housing, which presupposes grants and state funding. There's a lot of stuff that, in a way, thank goodness we didn't do another updated strategic plan, because we'd have to tear it up. And what I was hoping we might be able to do tonight, for however long you guys are comfortable doing it, is to begin to talk about just this kind of stuff. It's hard to know what assumptions to start with, but I think we can assume make an assumption of lower revenue. And what does that mean to the town in all of this year and into 2021. And what is the role of the FinCom in even looking at that and then maybe providing some kind of concrete advice on where the town priorities should be? If services have to get cut, which ones? If things need to be shuttered, you know, I know they're not opening the library this summer, but one of the, you know, one person I spoke to positive, well, maybe they should shut the library a couple days more a week and that'll save money. That's going to be part of the ongoing narrative going into the fall. How do we save money here? How do we save money there? Without there being a coherent, comprehensive plan to lay it against. So
It always comes down to personnel, Fred. That's the big expense. So if they are shuttering the library, are they keeping the entire staff on?
well, that would be a question for the library, but if you look at police, if you look at fire and a number of other departments, a lot of the personnel are locked in. It's a union issue. It's not a work issue. It's not like if I had
Right, but those would be the essential services that you can't do anything about. But Ira's got a good point, looking at staff. I mean, for what we call I don't want to say non-essential, but,
Right.
you know, like the fluff, which is the library. Human services is another area, recreation department. I mean, we're not going to be having the programs this summer that generate revenue for the rec department. What's the planning there? I mean, how are they going to make up for that shortfall? And what are those people doing right now? I mean, are they doing programs, or that's like another area?
I
And
think
Council on Aging too, the senior center, what's going on there? Those are the, fire, police, DPW, harbor,
right.
we can't, I mean, they're still functioning because they have to.
So it, as Stephen says, they don't have to be shut down completely, but
Right.
if they are partially shut down, then the staff should be partially laid off, because that's the way
I think it's
we
called
would save
furlough.
money. Furloughed, yeah, sure.
So that the department, I mean, you have to go back to the department heads again, police, fire, those essential services have to happen in the town. EMTs have to still be responding to things, but you're right, Stephen, the fluff or those things,
Can we call them non-essential services rather than fluff?
Okay.
okay.
it's just not right.
Well, what's
It's not
non-essential? Well,
funny.
non-essential, I think it's all essential. How about this stuff that is not, I don't know.
Oh, schools as well.
So we all know what we're referring to when we're
May I-
referring to
May
life-saving.
I step in for 1 second here? The library is down 2 employees already. They're going to be doing curbside pickup for people during the summer, and they have programming that's going to be available online for the summer. So it sounds to me like there is going to be
Okay,
enough
that's
work
good.
for the staff at the library, and it is not really a non-essential service to a large number of people in this town.
Right.
Well, nothing is.
So
Something is.
nothing-
But I
Nothing is, but-
seriously doubt that they will be hiring the 2 people they're short.
But so here's the thing. It's like, we don't know if we're talking about from let me see, from your perspective, we go this way. I can't even figure out the right way to do it there. It's that way. Anyway, our wrong
The
hand.
Macarena, Fred. All right.
It's that way. Okay. So if we're talking about the effect of COVID on the town, is it like this? Or is it like this? Does the town fundamentally change as a function? Because when you talk about furloughing people, sometimes that means they go away forever. You can't find them when you need them again, if the town's coming back up again. And one of the things we can't anticipate, and this is maybe this is part of our liaison role, is there seems to be almost a consensus in the FinCom anyway, that every department to some degree should be thinking about where it can cut costs, right?
They've already been told to do that.
Right. So what essential services are required based on how many tourists there are, how many EMT visits there are going to be this summer, into the fall, whatever, is one set of things. How much beach traffic there's likely to be, but nobody knows the answer to those right now. This is all.
Evidently, the fire department's down 2 people as well.
So I think that instead of going over, Fred, if I can jump in, instead of going over and talking about the, you know, the prioritizing the departments as to who should get what, maybe the theory goes something like the most impacted departments based on COVID reopening, just like the businesses, the restaurants are getting, you know, hit hardest. Maybe that kind of theory applies to the government as well, and those departments that are hit the hardest need to take the deepest budget cuts. And that's just a theory, you know, but every department head needs to be looking, because there needs to be an understanding that those revenues aren't going to support the budget that we've looked at over the past 6 months. So that's my feeling, that as department heads, it's under their purview to do the best they can to make sure that their revenues match their, you know, that they can look for opportunities, and that they should be very serious about doing that.
I'm also concerned about needs. You know, one thing that we really got to learn this past year was just how large a segment of the working population of town is tied to the show fishing industry. And that industry at the moment is got to be one of the hardest hit of any, with all of these bars closing. They're not selling any oysters. So I'm not, there's also got to be there's going to be a need side too. And all of the restaurants in this town, it's like people, there's going to be a lot of pain. And I'm not sure what that means in terms of the local government, again, versus state or other. But
Well, that's the point. Some of this we can't know right now. And to your point, Kathy, one of the things I wanted to get a sense of the committee tonight, we don't have to solve any problems actually, or advisory board. But I'm not clear for myself.
Yeah.
Certainly not clear for the committee, how deep a dive we want to do into the kinds of questions you just raised, so that we become a more specific advisory board about the effect of COVID on the town, as opposed to the usual, well, 2% increase in this department or that department. I think we all agree that there are going to be impacts that are uneven around the budget, and that there are people who are working on that right now, the select board, the department heads, the TA. I don't have a feel for what our role should be, but since the impact is going to be financial, it feels like we have some role.
But since the budget is what we're talking about, shouldn't we be looking specifically at the budget? For instance, there's money, I forget what we call the contingency fund that we always have been funding for the last 20 years. It's a line item. It should be, obviously we should
You're talking about OPEB?
recommend that it be used. There's also money that we pay, substantial amount of money that we always pay to fund the county retirement fund. That's another place to
That's okay.
find,
Yep.
find money. So all I'm saying is, I think if we would be well served to actually look at the budget before we have this conversation, or at least have it in front of us.
But when you say the budget, are you
I
talking
agree.
as it existed 4 months ago, or the reconfigured budget that we expect?
All we have, well, obviously the latest budget that there is. I mean, I don't know.
Yeah.
I mean, obviously the latest numbers are the truest numbers, I guess.
Well, and then, so are you feeling like we should revisit the budget items that we looked at, say, back in January?
I don't see the point.
but the
We're
point
gonna
is
have
that
a
we
whole
can
new
defer.
budget. So I
Well,
don't
let's
see
look
the
at the
point.
budget.
I agree.
And where is the leadership from the town administrator? Now that he's here for another 8 weeks, shouldn't he actually be on a 1-hour Zoom meeting? I mean, that would help. At least he'd have answers.
I
I
agree.
think where we can help out here is advisory for the Board of Selectmen to kind of steer them in a direction to come up with some of these answers. I don't think they're not focusing on it. Like everybody's just kind of in shock, it seems. which is true, but
I,
go ahead.
Can't we recommend?
Stephen,
though, some-
I agree. I'm gonna,
One at a time, please.
Go ahead, Kath.
can I jump in, Steve? Can I
Yeah.
jump in?
Sure.
And then I'll be done on my spiel. And here's why I'm so hot for this tonight is I've been on a bunch of Zoom meetings. I've watched a ton of, the meetings with the boards, the meetings with this, the meetings with that. There's a ton, and I will say somebody needs to be the adult in the room, because there's a lot of hand wringing and a lot of finger pointing and a lot of what ifs and a lot of chat and talk, and nobody's offering any solutions. And I'm frustrated with that. So I think there's, we need to get to a point where somebody can have a solution. And I think, Stephen, that was an awesome, we're here as an advisory board. Let's guide the selectmen by saying, you know what, here's what, we don't have the answers either. We don't know them, but somebody needs to start to be addressing this, or we're going to be in a world of hurt. And I'm frustrated with the hand wringing and the lack of solutions. So, and that's my piece, and I'm going to just sit here and zip it for the rest of the meeting, I promise.
That's okay. And by the way, I want to add one other wrinkle to this conversation. Who's that adorable child? Oh. We have coming up in the next year a number of major debt service articles coming our way that we've talked about for a couple of years now. But, the North Regional High School thing, we don't know where that's going to go. The dredging is another one. Who knows whatever's going to happen with the sewer, the upgrade to the water system.
Rudy.
These are going to require the town to approve new debt, which is going to be difficult to do if people aren't getting their seasonal income this year. It's going to be hard to ask people to vote for debt and a higher tax base if they haven't made their normal money, and that needs to be added into the budget discussion, because it isn't just about cutting the budgets. It's about what are the things that are going to drive taxes up that are going to cost people money as well. And there are a bunch of them. So if we're going to be in that position of giving advice, which I think is the right thing to do personally, let's be comprehensive about it. Let's make sure that we're at least paying attention to some of these big things that are going to come back in the fall. All that's happened is they got pushed off to the fall, but they'll be on the ballot. And if we think they were good things, how are they getting paid for? Is a big question.
Fred, I have Jude Ahern has her hand raised. I don't know if you want to recognize her right now.
For a question or comment?
Question, I am assuming.
Can she tell you what the question is, and you can decide
what is
whether or
it
not you want us?
relate to?
Yep, hang on one sec.
This conversation, I think, would be a good thing to know.
Hey, kitty, kitty, mew, mew. That's a pretty kitty, kitty.
It is.
Janet's cat. I had a cat like that. Oh,
I love the mustache.
the mustache.
Oh, while that's going on, can I go back to what Kathy and Stephen were talking about and ask if we as a committee can identify some expenses that we could recommend could be deferred while we're in this crisis situation, like funding, what's the benefit program? There's other things that Stephen was talking about. And if we could identify some places where we know we have to contribute, but if we could defer because we're in an emergency crisis.
Well, yeah, the one that
Do we
comes to
really
mind
think
is
that
the
Dan
OPEB.
hasn't thought of this?
Yeah,
I'm like, I understand we're here. I
Well,
agree.
maybe we could ask Dan what if he's got. Maybe he has a plan and we don't know about it. I mean, perhaps they're doing all this, but
I'm happy to ask that question, and I'll follow.
also, can we ask the town accountant if they can give us any sort of revenue projections? I mean, is it at a point where that can even be done?
I'm gonna doubt it, Stephen. Because everything I've heard so far about the projections for the summer is like a shrug of the shoulders.
Right. It's not.
You just don't know. But they're assumed to be down. I know one of them,
So if they're going to be down, you'd know a percentage. So then you just go with that.
but I don't think you're gonna know until you see it, until people either show or don't show up. I
Right,
did,
well, we know for the beach administration, they're not going to be collecting revenue at that parking lot because they're closed that. So that's like, what, 150,000 a year? Or
but
I think
Rebecca
that
was
was a,
telling me that they sold more beach stickers this past weekend than they anticipated. They
well,
brought
that's good news.
in $12,000 in revenue this past weekend. So
Yeah, but have beach stickers ever been needed on Memorial Day weekend before? Is that the
No.
precipitous for it?
well, that's
Yeah.
probably part of it, right? So
So is
Rebecca,
that just pre-collected revenue based on timing of people buying their beach stickers?
Yeah, probably.
Rebecca, did Jude indicate what she wants to ask?
Yep, I had the chat shut off, so she wasn't allowed to, but I figured out, and she asked if Dan was gonna resubmit a budget to you before he leaves. She said
And the
167,
answer is, I don't know.
okay.
I have no idea.
Why doesn't she ask Dan that question?
Nobody has indicated that there will be a new budget. I'm going to guess no. If I were going to go out on the limb, I don't think they're that far down the road yet. That is I know he's talking to the department heads, and I said I'll follow up and I'll try to get an answer on whether they are 80% done, 20% done.
Well, maybe we're jumping the gun here, because maybe I've read something where they're saying to go by last year's budget up until we figure out
That's right.
the rest of the year. So if
That's
people are
it.
going to still continue with the budget as it is after June, the end of the fiscal year, then, it's just pushing that down the line. But so maybe we don't have enough to work with right now.
Well, we don't. And really, I mean, all I really wanted to ask was, do you guys want to go into this territory, basically, and start to think along the lines of ways we can give good advice come the fall or this summer to the select board, to the new TA, from the finance committee's perspective? And what are the just initial brainstorming ideas about where we would do some good, and start to have a conversation about a structured way to do it, so that we're not just, rambling on, well, we could cut this, we could cut that.
Right.
We actually have a process in place at some point that says we've looked at departmental budgets, and to Kathy's point before, these are the ones we think are perhaps the most affected by COVID. So we believe, and this is, I'm not saying this is what we believe, but it could be, these are the ones that should be considering the deepest cuts. Here's some areas of, I think Ira was saying before.
Instead of saying cuts, you might want to, for the ones that are like non-essential, perhaps asking the department heads for their input on how they feel they can plan for making up this budget shortfall.
Yeah.
And put it in their laps in terms of, because
Yeah.
obviously we're looking way at the big picture bit here, and first thing that comes to my mind is, yeah, let's cut this, let's cut that, let's cut this, but they're not my departments. I mean, we do have department heads, like Suzanne Thomas is usually very good at putting together explanations as to why she has expenses for this and that, and she also can project pretty well. And I'm sure the librarian can do the same, because she could put together a report about what she's doing now. So,
I just want to say, the other thing is the point that somebody made earlier about when we do need these people back, it's going to be harder and more expensive to get them back, which isn't necessarily to say that we should keep them, but it is something to think about going forward in the future with a lot of this stuff.
I think I think on that point, oh, and I'm sorry, I promised I would keep my mouth shut, but I can't. On that point with hiring people, there are going to be a ton of people looking for jobs. There are a ton of people that are going to want to get back into the workforce, that are going to be able to have opportunities to be employed. We're not the only town facing this. So there aren't, there isn't 3% unemployment right now. So when there is time to open back up and hire people, I'm sure there are going to be quite a few people that will be available. I'm not worried about having a workforce deficit. That would not be a concern.
All right.
Can I raise
That's just
an issue?
that's just my opinion.
Can I raise an issue if we assume that our budget is going to be less for the next year than it was? And looking down, what does this mean in terms of 2.5? And what are the implications? Does that put limits on us in terms of a bounce back? I don't know
what will happen is when you get those big ticket items for debt, the budget will be appropriated up to, to stay below the 2.5% increase. Anything over that just becomes warrant articles to vote on to go above the 2.5 for funding. So that
if we
can all,
de- If we
and then that-
decrease our budget too much, then we're gonna get hit with a wave of all of this when we come out of it.
right, which only makes sense that, the ultimate way that we're going to make up for this shortfall is taxes are going to go up. That's just going to have to happen. I mean, how else can you fund a budget? We can't expect them to cut things down to bare bones. There's some expenses I'm sure that they can, whittle down. That's why I like the past, for instance, the school budget, the way they showed the past 5 years of spending and each, what they budgeted and what they actually spent. That gives you a good picture of, you can say, okay, well, you've kind of had about a 1% increase of fluff over the past 5 years. Just cut your budget by that percent. The budget that we were working on, the overall increase, was it 2.5%? Was that
It was
the?
within the 2.5, I'm pretty sure.
It was within the 2.5. So obviously, if we're going to stick to this year's budget, then that means that everything has to be cut by we need a 2.5% decrease overall.
Well, that's an interesting idea. See if it works out that way.
Well, then you can just ask everybody to say, okay, take a look at your department heads. Please take a look at your budgets and see where you can cut 2.5%. Don't look at individual items. Just say, okay, I have to take X amount of dollars out of my budget. What areas within my budget can I do that?
And I'll tell you that they
some will
will all
probably
look
be
to
like
cut
they can't.
whatever they can before they cut staff.
Well,
Right,
and
exactly.
to the point,
So we might just be looking at not hiring into the positions that have been lost due to attrition as quickly. And that's a way
Mhm.
to cover a deficit for a short period of time. Take your
Right.
time, don't cover those attrition positions, and then just take your time, find the right person. And it's not a bad thing to have open positions because of attrition, especially at this time.
and I think to a point Woody made before, which is true in general, is that the lion's share, or maybe Stephen said this, lion's share of any of the budgets is people, and that is always true. And the fluff, to use the term differently, in budgets, the operational stuff, the administrative stuff, doesn't usually represent more than about 5 or 10% of the total, if that. And it seems to me, if I can summarize where we are to this point, that there are 3 themes that we might, I don't know what the right word is, employ, embrace, whatever. One is, I think, a couple of people said, can we look at the budget itself? I know Woody said that. And then that's kind of a dual-edged sword. There's the budget that was, and then there's the budget to be. On the theory that the department heads and Dan are working on revising their budgets, there's 2 ways to get at that. One is to talk to the department heads. We can do that through our liaison roles. And then the other is to talk to Dan and kind of do a pincher movement and see if we get an agreement from both sides of that perspective, because presumably they're going to say the same thing, right? In theory, if Dan's meeting with the department heads and they're working on cutting the budgets or revising the budgets, we should get the same story from both ends. Searching for in theory. Oh, thank you, Siri is searching for in theory. So what I might suggest is that we, through our liaison roles, reach out to our various department heads and just ask the question, what are you guys doing? What revisions are you making? And then come back at the next meeting with a report and just say,
I
hey,
think we should just ask the town administrator that
I
question.
do too, because
Yeah,
that's the
just let it-
overview of the whole thing.
Exactly. Just ask the town administrator to talk to department heads and find out what they're doing to, I
well, I
don't know.
believe that's already happening, Stephen.
Okay, good. So,
He's indicated to me that he has been working with the department heads to review and revisit the budgets, but without specifics. And my sense is, to Jude's question, I don't think that process is that far down the road yet that they have answers. And partial,
So
why
then
would
we're not
we-
ready to be looped. We're
Yeah,
not be
why
ready to
would
be
we
looped.
butt
Yeah.
into that process right now?
Exactly.
Brad, may I request that you ask Dan if there's anything we can do to help?
sure.
Very good. That's a great approach.
Could
What
you
can we do to
also-
help?
Cat again, bring the cat up. Where's the cat?
Where's Mr. Whiskers?
Mr. Whiskers?
Could you
Gone to do
also
cat
ask
things.
him if he
We
might
love the
come-
cat.
Could you also ask him if he can come to our next Zoom meeting, please?
Absolutely.
Thank you.
I'm not going to speak to that particular issue at the moment, but yeah,
Just ask him.
I
Then.
will be happy to.
Okay.
Invite
Tell,
him.
tell him tell him to be very helpful.
So let's say for the sake of argument, I ask Dan if we can be helpful. And I will also ask where they stand in terms of department to department, revisiting the budgets, where they are in the process, and we get some sort of answer.
Maybe he could email you an update and Rebecca could forward it to the rest of us.
Is that what people would like to see? That if we
I'd prefer it in writing.
Well, yeah,
actually.
That's what I just said. Yeah.
Right, exactly. Rather than
if
have
we can get something in writing,
needing to talk about it.
then I will forward that to everybody prior to our next meeting.
Great.
So
Love
and then
it.
can you approach the school committees for what are they going to do in terms of
Yeah, I
reducing?
do it, and
Because they don't report to the town administrator.
I'll give Tom Conrad a call and see where they're at as well.
Well,
Everything,
there's a school committee. So then you should ask them, what are they planning on doing to
Well,
cut?
well,
I mean,
the school committee doesn't mandate cuts, as far as I know.
the school committee puts the budget, I'm sorry. Yeah, the principal and,
I'll call the
right,
superintendent.
right.
I can start there. And,
That's a good idea. That's a good start.
yeah, I'll do that. That's not a problem. I'm happy to do that.
Good.
So-
Doesn't the school committee approve the budget though for the schools? Yeah, the school committee approves their budget. So then you should also ask the school committee. Take a good look at the school budget, see the situation we're in right now, reduce revenue because of this whole COVID thing. What is the school committee going to do to help us to make up for this shortfall? Would be a way to go.
The school committee actually should be very active because they have a whole set of issues outside of the budget.
Yeah.
So I'm never, ever going to promise to keep my mouth shut again.
Okay.
Yeah, we didn't really expect it.
All right, so
We're disappointed.
I'm going to contact Dan Hort, and I'll get whatever information I can along the lines we just discussed. I will contact the school committee and Tom Conrad. What do you all want to do? You want to, shall we
You
adjourn?
all done your census?
Yeah, yeah.
Yes.
I got my granddaughter and my baby 1 month old granddaughter and my kids, and they were living here on April 1st, so they're now Felicians, full board.
Oh, nice. Well, congratulations on the new baby anyway.
Thanks.
Hopefully healthy and happy.
Very.
That's great. So frankly, that's all I've got. I mean, there's a laundry list of things that could become issues, but they're not pertinent yet. And pending hearing what the town is doing about revising its budgets, we don't have anything more to discuss on that front. I don't have
I
any.
will move to adjourn.
So second,
Okay, everybody in favor of adjourning?
Yes.
Yes. Bye, Sarah.
Right.
Fred, can you hear me?
Yes.
Yes.
Wow, could you stay on the line? I'm going to try to see if you and I can get my picture up.
Okay.
Thanks.
Rebecca, would you stay on the line too?
Sarah, we just voted to adjourn, so.
Yes, we've adjourned.
We're adjourned.
Bye-bye.
Yes.
If you're curious to see if Linda's picture comes up, stay on. Otherwise,
Email me. Bye-bye.
Yeah.
bye.
I will.
Bye.
Stay safe, everyone.
Thank
Bye.
you.
What do I need to do?
well,
Oh
you-
my God, how do I hang up?
I can still hear you all.
Usually there's, at least on my screen,
How do you get out of
a little
this?
thing on the bottom that says start or stop video.
Yep, you want to go to the red button that says end on the right-hand corner.
That's,
Mine doesn't. How about
If you-
leave?
Leave is good. Yep.
Left-hand side?
is that your left hand?
Oh, hi, Kat. Leave.
There
Okay.
you go. That's what you need to do, Kath. Hit leave.
So Linda,
I'm technology challenged. I don't know how to get, last week I had my picture and no sound.
all right, so well, let's try to, we've got sound, we can hear you. So usually there is a little icon, at least on my screen, it's on the bottom. And it would say start video or stop video, mute or not mute. There'll be, I see a microphone and
I got
I
him back here.
see a little
I
camera.
gotta leave.
Now I get Kathy, I hit the bottom. Oh, I lost the whole thing.
So we hear your voice,
Now I get you.
don't see you yet.
So what do I need to hit?